On March 3rd at 9 p.m., Sarah Everard was walking the busy London streets on her way home after visiting a friend. She chose to walk on well-lit streets and she spoke with her boyfriend on the phone. She did everything women are taught to do to improve their safety. Unfortunately, Sarah never made it home. She was kidnapped and murdered. Her remains were discovered in a body bag on March 12th. She was 33 years old. The suspect in her murder is a police officer, someone that we're all taught to trust. This virtual vigil is our way of honoring her memory and praying that she is in a better place. But that is not the sole reason of this vigil. We are continuing a very important conversation. We're honoring any woman who has been affected by violence, sexual assault, or harassment. On average, a woman is murdered by a man every 3 days in the UK. 1 in 4 women have experienced domestic abuse, and 1 in 3 women will experience physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. The statistics go on and on. I have 2 sisters. Based off of those statistics, one of us will experience physical or sexual violence in our lifetime. I cannot tell you how many times I've prayed for it to be me over either of them. That is not something I should have to pray for, but I am filled with fear every time they go somewhere, because we're not safe anywhere. I've been called pretty girl by old men as I've walked down the streets. I've had to leave a movie theater because a man kept moving seats to sit closer to me. I've had to block boys on social media because they've sent me unwanted, explicit pictures. And if you ask any girl, I'm sure they've had similar and probably worse experiences. And that breaks my heart. But it also motivates me. I don't want my sisters to live in a world like this. I don't want my mom or my children or my friends to live like this. I want to make the world safer for us. Let Sarah's story inspire you to fight to make sure that what happened to her never happens again. When we come together, we can make a change. Thank you.
In recent years, in several Latin American countries, acts of femicide have increased from around 70 to over 100%. Femicide is an act of gender-based discriminatory killing, which is different from feminine homicide, which is the murder of women under any circumstance. It's important to clarify the difference about what femicide is, as well as naming it as its own problem, because it holds accountability to the issue. Examples of femicide include murdering an intimate partner or significant other, as well as murdering a non-related woman before or after sexually assaulting her, which is also, unfortunately, extremely common. These are clear examples of violence against women, and they must be treated as such. Recently, in many Latin American countries, because of both internal and external pressures, they have adopted this term along with its own punishments. Unfortunately, often these crimes are rarely reported, rarely investigated, and justice is seldom served. Despite the new nomenclature surrounding the subject and harsher sentencing if found guilty, findings of women and young girls beaten dead in the street are climbing rapidly. Many activists and researchers within the country illustrate that this is most likely an example of a desperate grapple for power by men in these societies. Because of the lack of widespread education, gender roles have been strictly enforced much longer in Latin American countries than in the United States. Therefore, now men have begun to feel the grasp on their power slipping as the internet makes knowledge more accessible, and with knowledge comes power and status elevation. So, men in Latin American countries are believed to have resorted to violence in many ways to combat the growing liberalism that threatens their precious oppression. Without recognizing the clear breaches of human rights in the countries that surround us as Americans, we fail to uphold the tradition of freedom we value so dearly. Additionally, by being able to recognize obvious violence against women in other countries, it will help us to become sensitive to the constant crimes against women that occur in America every day.
It can be so incredibly exhausting and disheartening to hear about so much violence against women. Sometimes it feels like we see a new story every single day of another human getting their life taken from them simply for existing as a woman. But while we're certainly aware of these issues, we don't talk near enough about possible solutions. So what can we do to combat the rise of violence against women? According to the World Health Organization, every 1 in 3 women, or nearly 736 million women worldwide, experienced physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. To combat this, we must hold our communities and governments accountable and advocate for policies, services, and education dedicated to stopping this violence. This violence is rooted in gender inequality, so pushing for laws that support policies like equal pay, childcare, and gender equality are essential. Calling for care centers so that women can easily access health services, shelter, and protection is also incredibly important to support victims of gender-based violence. And while measures to protect and obtain justice for these women are incredibly important, the most impactful thing we can do in our everyday lives is to focus on preventative measures. This violence against women starts very young. An estimated quarter of young women from 15 to 24 have already experienced domestic violence. We need to support education in schools that teaches communities to prevent this violence against women. United Nations Women, along with the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts, created a curriculum for young people aged 5 to 25 called Voices Against Violence for this exact purpose. It highlights many of the root causes of discriminatory violence and teaches them how to reject it. If we want to end violence against women, we have to end the cultural norms that allow it to happen in the first place. Start a conversation amongst your peers about gender roles and stereotypes. Challenge inequality. Teach children about consent and bodily autonomy early. And don't blur the lines or make excuses. No more boys will be boys. No more what was she wearing or she was asking for it. Donate your time or money to organizations that fight against violence against women, like the YWCA or the United Nations Women. Call your friends out when they make sexist or racist jokes, or catcall somebody, or make unwanted sexual comments. And most importantly, listen to survivors. Less than 40% of women report harassment or abuse. We need to normalize listening to women so as not to allow their abusers to go unpunished, and to allow for more women to feel safe to come forward with their stories and know that they will be believed. If we want to work to dismantle the norms that allow for this violence to happen, as well as provide support for victims in these gender-based attacks, we can create a world where women can feel safe existing in the spaces that we're meant to be in. Thank you.